Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Our sources this week are really pulling us across some vast and pretty technical frontiers.
Yeah,
We're
definitely.
looking at everything from, the secrets of biological immortality almost deep underground
With those mole rats, yeah.
to the complexities of hitting single-digit nanometer precision in microchips, which is just mind-bending.
Absolutely. And then all the way out to, what was it, 10 billion-year-old cosmic relics?
Exactly. It's a huge stack of developments, a lot to process. And, well, that's our mission here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cutting through all that noise, trying to connect these seemingly disparate dots. Tech, geopolitics, human ambition,
Yeah.
really giving you the shortcut to being, well, truly well-informed.
That's right. And for you, the learner, this deep dive is really about finding the coherence in what can feel like chaos sometimes.
How does the quest for, say, safer gene editing connect to $500 million pouring into defense-focused reusable rockets?
Exactly. Or how do both of those things maybe influence the high-stakes trade maneuvers over things like rare earth minerals?
Right.
So we're going to spend the next chunk of time unpacking these shifts, looking at the complex global dynamics with strict neutrality, always,
Always.
and most importantly, trying to reveal the patterns and the implications for the future that you really need to know about.
Okay, let's dive in then. We're starting small, relatively speaking, but profoundly important. The inner frontier, human biology, and that quest for longevity.
Right, biological resilience.
And we're starting with nature's own master of persistence, the naked mole rat, which frankly isn't the prettiest creature.
No, maybe not conventionally handsome, but biologically, it's an absolute outlier. These things often live over 30 years.
30 years. For a rodent that size, it's unheard of.
Totally unheard of. Their whole lifespan just kind of throws conventional theories of aging right out the window.
It's incredible. And the key, the sources say, isn't just unique DNA. It's linked to this almost complete resistance to cancer. What's the actual biological mechanism there? How does that work?
Well, it seems to center on a substance they produce in really, really large amounts. High molecular weight hyaluronic acid. You might hear it called HA.
HA.
Yeah.
Like in skin creams, moisturizers.
Kind of, but not really. It's the same basic molecule, but in the naked mole rat, it's vastly different. It's much, much larger and heavier than the HA found in us, in humans.
Okay, so bigger molecules, what does that do?
It creates this kind of thick, viscous matrix around their cells, almost like a biological, goo, a protective layer.
So it's like a physical barrier.
It's more than just a barrier. It's an active signaling system. This massive HA matrix acts like a super stiff cushion, and it essentially tells the cells, hey, you're too crowded in here.
Ah, okay.
So when cells try to divide rapidly, which, is the first step towards tumor formation, this heavy HA actively blocks their progression. It basically slams the brakes on uncontrolled growth before it can start.
So it's not just about repairing damage later. It's about preventing the problem in the first place.
Precisely. Prevention. And scientists are now really digging into how to replicate not just the production, but the specific structure of this unique HA in human cells.
So using it as a blueprint.
Exactly. A low toxicity blueprint, potentially, for cancer prevention or maybe even protecting our own cells from age-related breakdown. It's a fascinating lesson from evolution.
It really is. Okay, speaking of blueprints.
Yeah.
Let's jump from natural evolution to very deliberate technological evolution.
Right.
There's a massive breakthrough reported in gene editing, this one out of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, focused on maximizing precision. It's called LFN-ACRPA.
Yeah, LFN-ACRPA. It sounds complex, and it is, but the core idea could really revolutionize personalized medicine.
How so? What's the big deal here?
Well, what's fascinating is that this new tool directly tackles the biggest safety headache in genetic editing.
Which is?
The off-target effect, with first-gen tools like CRISPR-Cas9, which are brilliant at cutting DNA where you want.
But sometimes they cut elsewhere, too.
Exactly. They can sometimes make unintended cuts in other parts of the genome. And that can lead to, well, serious complications down the line. You don't want random cuts in your DNA.
No, definitely not. So how does LFN-ACRPA fix this? What is it technically?
Okay, so LFN-ACTAT stands for Lipid Nanoparticle Anti-CRISPR Protein Amplifier System. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, just a bit.
But the key is it's essentially a sophisticated protein-based delivery mechanism. And the real innovation is the use of something called an anti-CRISPR protein.
Anti-CRISPR. So it works against CRISPR.
In a very specific way. This protein is programmed to safely and very rapidly degrade or deactivate the CRISPR editing machinery after the precise genetic cut has been made.
Ah, so it's a timing mechanism. It makes the cut, then immediately breaks down the tool so it can't make any more cuts elsewhere.
You got it. It's
Huh.
like ensuring the surgeon's scalpel is automatically put away and, deactivated the very nanosecond the intended procedure is finished.
That's clever. And
Yeah.
does it work well?
Extremely well, according to the reports. Researchers achieved a really impressive 60-fold reduction in unintended error rates compared to previous methods.
60-fold. Wow. That's not incremental. That's a leap.
It's a huge leap. And that kind of precision, well, it really opens the door to potentially safer, more tailor-made therapies for complex genetic disorders, things like sickle cell anemia, muscular dystrophy.
Stuff that's been really hard to tackle safely.
Right. It dramatically increases the potential for these genetic interventions to move safely from the lab into widespread clinical use. It's very promising.
Okay, shifting gears again from genetics now to neurology. There's a fascinating discovery about how our brains handle chronic pain. It seems like when survival is on the line, the brain has this selective switchboard.
That's a perfect way to describe it, actually. Scientists identified these specific neurons, they have Y1 receptors, that can actually modulate how we perceive chronic pain.
Modulate meaning turn it up or down.
Essentially, yeah. Turn it down, in this case. The discovery confirms the brain isn't just passively receiving pain signals from the body, it's actively prioritizing.
Okay.
This particular neural circuit can effectively override chronic pain signals when our survival instincts kick in. Things like intense hunger, sudden fear, the instinct to run from danger.
Right, the classic example.
Mhm.
You twist your ankle badly hiking, but then you see a bear. Suddenly the ankle doesn't hurt so much.
Precisely. Your brain temporarily ignores that ankle pain entirely because escaping the bear is the absolute highest priority task. Survival first, pain second.
So the brain just shifts resources.
Exactly. It shifts resources away from processing the pain signal towards immediate danger assessment and response. And this insight, it offers immense new hope for managing chronic pain.
How so?
Well, instead of just relying on generalized treatments like opioids or anti-inflammatories, which have their own issues,
Big issues, yeah.
scientists can now focus on developing highly personalized treatments. Therapies that specifically target and modulate these Y1 receptor mechanisms within the brain itself.
So potentially helping chronic pain sufferers kind of flip that survival switch on demand, maybe.
That's the hope. It's still early days, of course, but it's a really encouraging direction for research. Deeply encouraging.
Okay, and let's wrap up this section on inner resilience with a couple of maybe lower tech, but still crucial proactive approaches. First, cognitive resilience. Our sources were really hammering this point again. Reading books shapes our minds. It fosters empathy, critical thinking, civic engagement.
And that's so vital, isn't it? Especially now in this era of, instant gratification, algorithmic feeds pushing short bursts of info.
Yeah, the endless scroll.
The sustained linear effort it takes to read a book. It actually fosters deeper focus and analytical skills. Skills you absolutely need to resist the superficiality of a lot of modern discourse. It's like a workout for the mind,
Yeah.
a self-regulatory tool.
A mental workout. I like that. And then on the environmental side, something even simpler. Just stepping outside.
Nature therapy.
Yeah, research indicates that spending just 20 minutes in nature reduces key physiological markers of stress. We're like in lower blood pressure, reduced heart rate.
And this really reinforces that nature therapy concept. It's not just a vague feeling of, oh, this is nice. It's an immediate, measurable physiological response.
20 minutes, that's it.
That 20-minute exposure seems to trigger rapid relaxation mechanisms in the body that directly counter the chronic stress so many of us experience, especially in urban environments.
So maybe combining the two. A quiet read for 20 minutes, but do it outside in a park or garden.
That might just be the most accessible and effective prescription for modern life, honestly. Low cost, high reward.
I think you might be right. Okay, that was a fascinating deep dive into our inner world biological resilience. Now, let's pivot completely. Our second deep dive, the outer frontier. We're shifting gears dramatically, from microscopic genes to massive rockets and cosmic time capsules, starting with the rapidly expanding business of space defense.
Yeah, and this is big money. Stoke Space Technologies just secured a massive funding round, Series D, $510 million.
$500 million.
Wow. Yeah. And this huge capital injection, it really reflects a growing trend where the private space launch industry is getting increasingly intertwined with U.S. defense initiatives.
Defense wants.
They prioritize highly reusable rockets that can launch frequently with rapid turnaround times. It's about maintaining reliable access to orbit, building resilience in space infrastructure.
And Stoke is working on some pretty cutting-edge hardware for this, right? With their Nova vehicle.
They are. They're using innovative propulsion, but the really crucial thing is they had a successful hot test of their second stage engine recently.
The second stage. Isn't that usually the part that just burns up or gets thrown away?
Traditionally, yes. That's what makes Stoke's approach different. Their design uses an actively cooled heat shield on that second stage.
Actively cooled. How does that help?
Well, protecting a second stage during the intense heat of atmospheric re-entry is technically really complex and usually adds a lot of weight, which is why they're often disposable.
Right.
By using active cooling, circulating coolant through the shield, and combining that with sophisticated differential steering during descent.
So they can steer it while it's coming down.
Yeah, precisely. They aim to fully recover the most complex and expensive part of the launch vehicle. If they can nail that consistently, it could dramatically lower launch costs and massively increase the launch tempo. That's exactly what military logistics folks want to hear.
Speed and reusability, that seems to be the name of the game everywhere in space right now.
Absolutely. It underscores the fierce competition across the board. I mean, our sources also noted SpaceX is prepping its giant Super Heavy booster for Starship Flight 11. That's scheduled for October 13th.
The scale of Starship is just immense.
It is. So whether it's Stoke focusing on that rapid, maybe smaller scale responsive access, or SpaceX going for sheer heavy lift capability, the competition for reliable, cost-effective access to orbit is just incredibly fierce right now.
And those lines between defense, civil space like NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and private aerospace, they're blurring constantly.
Constantly being redrawn by these huge funding rounds and these major technological leaps. It's a dynamic landscape.
Okay, so that's the big physical hardware pushing the boundaries. Now let's talk about the microscopic hardware. Semiconductors.
Ah, the chips.
And Intel's big strategic push to try and reclaim dominance in that field. They just unveiled their new Panther Lake architecture.
This is Intel really staking its most serious claim to leadership in years. Panther Lake is built on their cutting-edge 18A process. That's 18 angstroms.
18 angstroms. And remind us how small that is.
An angstrom is 1/10 of a nanometer, so yeah. We are talking about absolutely incredible precision at the atomic scale. This is Intel's most advanced process technology to date.
And they're aiming this squarely at competitors like TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and Samsung.
Directly at them. It's a high-stakes gamble.
What actually makes the 18A process such a huge engineering leap? And how does that translate into, better performance for you using your computer?
Well, the transition relies on a fundamental shift in how transistors are designed. They're moving from the current FinFET architecture to something called GAFET.
Okay, GAFET.
Gate-all-around field effect transistor. Imagine a standard transistor today has control gates on maybe 3 sides of the electrical channel.
Right.
GI fraps the control gate completely around the channel, like a perfect tiny cylinder or nanowire.
So it gives them total 360-degree control over the electricity flowing through.
Exactly. Total control. And that drastically improves how well they can manage the current flow. And crucially, it minimizes current leakage wasted electricity.
Which means
you get higher transistor density, more computing power, packed into a smaller space while simultaneously achieving better energy efficiency. Less power needed for the same work, or more work for the same power.
And Intel's targeting this where first?
Directly at the high-end AI PCs, which are booming, and also the demanding gaming sector. Places where performance per watt is absolutely critical.
And their CEO, Pat Gelsinger, he's clearly making a big bet here, planning mass production at their new facility in Arizona.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the strategy, too. Bringing advanced manufacturing back to the U.S., boosting domestic production, trying to de-risk from those global supply chain vulnerabilities we've seen.
Makes sense. And it's not just for laptops and desktops, right?
No, absolutely not. They also previewed their next-gen server chip, the Clearwater Forest Xeon processor, that's also built on this 18A process, and it's tailored specifically for those essential heavy-duty AI workloads happening in data centers.
So it's a full-court press.
Yeah.
Consumer, enterprise, manufacturing.
It's a comprehensive, multi-front strategy. They're trying to stabilize operations, rebuild investor confidence, and really prove they're back at the cutting edge across the board. It's ambitious.
Definitely one to watch. Okay, let's shift focus again out to the cosmos. Astronomy's had some fascinating finds recently.
Always something amazing happening out there.
Let's start with the spectacular one, just based on the name. The cosmic baboon.
Huh. Yeah, I love that name too. Astrophotography just keeps bridging science and art in these wonderful ways.
So what is it? Just looks like a baboon.
Well, an astrophotographer, Greg Meyer, captured this truly stunning image of a vast nebula clouds of gas and dust. And because of the way the intricate formations of dust and gas are lit up, yeah, it strongly resembles the profile of a baboon sitting there in space.
Incredible. Is there science behind the pretty picture, though?
Oh, absolutely. These aren't just snapshots. They're often composite images, combining light captured through different filters to reveal specific things, like emissions from hydrogen alpha or oxygen the third atoms.
Which tells us?
Which helps map the structure and composition of these stellar nurseries. It helps astronomers understand the dynamics of how stars are actually forming within those beautiful clouds.
So art and science combined. Very cool. Now, from a nebula shape to something ancient and very specific. Interstellar object 3I at LS.
Yeah, this one is truly special. 3I at LS, it might be a 10 billion-year-old time capsule.
10 billion years old.
Yeah.
From before our solar system even formed.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Originating from a much earlier age of the universe, it's one of only a handful of objects ever confirmed to have come from outside our solar system and just passed through.
An interstellar visitor. What can we learn from it?
Well, analyzing its composition, the materials it's made of, could offer profound clues about the chemistry and physics of cosmic history before our own sun and planets came into being. It's literally bringing material evidence from, well, potentially near the beginning of time, right to our cosmic doorstep. Studying it is like cosmic archaeology.
Amazing. Okay, closer to home, we've got some exciting solar weather on the horizon. A reminder, the sun is not always calm and quiet.
Definitely not. There's a colossal coronal hole on the sun's surface right now.
A hole in the sun.
Sort of. It's a region where the sun's magnetic field lines open up out into space instead of looping back to the surface. This allows streams of high-speed solar wind, basically charged particles, to escape directly.
And when that stream hits Earth,
That's when we get potentially spectacular auroras, the northern and southern lights. They're predicting good shows around October 11th and 12th, especially in places like Canada and northern Europe.
beautiful, but is there a downside?
There can be. While the auroras are stunning, these streams of charged particles can also impact our technology. We always need to monitor solar weather for its potential effects on satellite communications, GPS accuracy, and critically, power grids here on Earth. A major solar storm could cause significant disruption.
Right, beauty and potential hazard combined. And finally, a really neat piece of citizen science related to the 2024 total solar eclipse. It seems it actually tricked birds.
It did. Researchers from Indiana University used a massive amount of data, over 10,000 observations crowdsourced from bird watchers.
Citizen science in action.
Exactly. And they confirmed that during the path of totality, when the sky went dark suddenly in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
the birds reacted exactly as they normally would at dusk. They quieted down, maybe headed towards roosts. And then, when the sun reappeared, just minutes later, they burst into song as if it were dawn.
A false dawn chorus.
Precisely. Their activity patterns were completely disrupted by that sudden, unexpected darkness and light. It's a really immediate, observable demonstration of how these big astronomical events directly impact biological rhythms right here on Earth.
That's fascinating, that sudden sensory whiplash for them. Okay, moving now to Deep Dive 3, focusing on the digital frontier.
Right. AI, governance, platform shifts. Big stuff.
Huge stuff, dominating capital investment, regulatory focus. It's everywhere right now. And we start with the high-stakes AI race, specifically this open-source AI challenge.
Yeah, there's a startup called Reflection AI. They just secured a staggering amount of funding, $2 billion.
$2 billion. For an AI startup, what's their valuation now?
$8 billion. This isn't just investment. It's a major strategic statement in the AI world.
What's their angle? They started with coding tools, right?
They did, focusing on complex, autonomous coding agents. But now they're pivoting, positioning themselves as, and this is their term, America's open frontier AI lab.
Open frontier, meaning open source.
Primarily, yes.
Oh, yeah.
They're directly challenging the big proprietary closed-source giants like OpenAI and Anthropic, and also positioning against state-backed Chinese firms like DeepSeek.
So What's the significance of going open source in this space? Why is that getting so much funding?
Well, it's complex. On one hand, it signals this huge investor appetite for open source technologies. The argument is that they democratize access to powerful AI.
Makes it available to more people, more researchers.
Right. And the proponents believe that broader community input can actually mitigate some risks associated with having just a few powerful, closed models controlling everything. Things like data privacy concerns, algorithmic bias.
But there must be downsides, too.
Oh, definitely. It forces a big debate. Can open source models, where the code is publicly available, truly maintain the same level of security and quality control as heavily guarded proprietary systems? There are real concerns about misuse if the models are completely open.
So it's a fundamental challenge to the established way AI has been developing recently.
Absolutely. A battle between open and closed philosophies, essentially.
But, despite all this massive investment, not everyone is completely sold on the pace, especially the sci-fi hype around AI.
No, there's definitely pushback.
We have a pretty significant reality check coming from a real titan of robotics, Rodney Brooks. He co-founded iRobot, the Roomba company.
Right, Brooks knows robotics inside and out.
And he's warning the industry is facing a significant bubble, particularly around humanoid robots.
Yeah, Brooks highlights what he sees as a critical disconnect. The current hype cycle, especially for these general-purpose humanoid robots you see in demos.
The ones that look like they're out of a movie?
Exactly. He argues that hype far exceeds the actual current technological feasibility. He thinks a lot of the astronomical investments pouring in right now are highly speculative.
Driven more by science fiction projections than solid engineering progress?
That's his argument, particularly when it comes to things like fine motor skills, dexterity, and just reliable, robust operation in the real world.
So if the money is flowing like crazy, where are the real technological bottlenecks that Brooks is pointing to? What's so hard?
He emphasizes the sheer complexity of integrating motors, sensors, and control systems smoothly. I mean, building a robot that can reliably lift a heavy box, relatively straightforward.
Right.
Building one that can reliably pick up a delicate egg without crushing it, while processing real-time visual feedback from cameras and maintaining its balance on two legs in an unpredictable environment. That is incredibly difficult.
Right, the difference between a controlled demo
Yeah.
and something that works reliably day in, day out.
Exactly. And he points to specific challenges like power density, having enough battery life and muscle strength in a form factor that's light and compact enough, and also high-fidelity haptics, the sense of touch. Replicating simple human dexterity is still years, maybe decades, away from being truly pragmatic or cost-effective for widespread use.
It's that classic gap between a cool lab demo and a functional, dependable machine you can actually mass produce and sell. Often gets lost in the Silicon Valley hype cycle.
Very often. It's a necessary dose of realism, I think.
Okay, let's shift from tech development to tech governance and platform accountability, starting with Google over in the United Kingdom.
Right. The UK's Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, took a pretty significant step recently.
What did they do?
They designated Google's Chrome browser and its search engine as having strategic market status. This is a new and quite serious official designation under their rules.
Strategic market status. And what does that mean for Google? What does it oblige them to do?
It means they now have to adhere to the UK's new Digital Markets Act, DMA, rules. These rules are specifically designed to mitigate Google's perceived market monopoly.
Oh, by forcing them to.
By forcing them to increase interoperability, basically, play nicer with competitors, and preventing them from unfairly favoring their own services within search results or the Android ecosystem.
So trying to level the playing field a bit.
That's the idea, and it's part of a global trend. Courts in the U.S. also recently found some of Google's practices constituted illegal monopolization. The regulatory scrutiny on big tech is definitely increasing worldwide. They're trying to retroactively regulate platforms that grew up largely unregulated.
Tough task.
Yeah.
Now, a much darker side of tech governance. A deeply concerning spyware scandal emerging from Italy.
Yeah, this is worrying. Allegations surfaced that the Italian government exploited sophisticated spyware called Paragon.
Paragon. Against who?
Reportedly against domestic political opponents and journalists. One named target was the prominent journalist Caltagirone. The report suggests this campaign targeted around 90 users globally, but focused internally as well.
Using government-grade spyware on your own citizens, journalists. That's a huge deal.
It's a severe threat to civil liberties and fundamental democratic processes. It really illustrates how this kind of powerful surveillance technology, often initially justified for fighting terrorism or serious crime,
Can easily be misused.
exactly, misused by governments to suppress domestic dissent, monitor opposition, and try to control the public narrative. It's a classic danger.
And sticking with tech misuse, but maybe less sinister, more just, fraudulent, we saw a massive issue crop up after the hype around OpenAI's video generation tool, Sora 2.
Oh, yeah, the Sora copycats.
The hype was just so intense when OpenAI teased it
It was
off.
huge. And almost immediately, dozens of imitation apps, completely fake apps posing as the real Sora 2 tool, flooded onto the Apple App Store.
What were they doing? Just charging people?
Yeah, misleading users, making false promises, running scams, basically capitalizing on the intense public curiosity and excitement. People wanted to try Sora 2, saw these apps, downloaded them.
And got ripped off or fed misinformation.
Right. It just underscores this persistent and seemingly really hard to solve challenge that app stores like Apple's and Google's face. How do you maintain vigilance against fraud and protect consumers when a major tech breakthrough generates instant, massive global excitement? The scammers move so fast.
It seems like a constant cat and mouse game.
Okay.
Okay, finally in this section, a significant policy shift from YouTube. They announced they are now allowing creators who were previously banned for misinformation, specifically around COVID-19 and election integrity violations, to request new accounts.
This is a really complex move and quite controversial. It signals a definite shift towards a more lenient stance on past violations.
Why the change? Did they give reason?
YouTube acknowledged that, looking back, some of their previous guidelines might have been too stringent and lacking clarity. That's their phrasing, which led to what some creators felt was arbitrary censorship or inconsistent enforcement.
So, trying to correct perceived overreach.
Potentially. It reflects this broader pressure all social media platforms are under. How do you balance maintaining content integrity, fighting harmful misinformation?
Against the need to accommodate free speech, even if that speech is contentious or challenges mainstream narrative.
Exactly. It's an incredibly difficult balancing act. The risk, obviously, is letting creators who spread harmful stuff back onto the platform. But the counter-argument is that overly strict enforcement stifles open debate and can feel like censorship. There's no easy answer here.
No, definitely not. Okay, let's move now to Deep Dive 4. The global stage. This is where we dig into the complex geopolitical tensions driving world events.
Right. Always a busy area.
And we're starting with a significant escalation in the U.S.-China trade relationship, specifically focusing on rare earth elements.
Yeah, this is high-stakes economic leverage being applied here. Rare earth elements, or REEs, they are absolutely critical for so many modern high-tech applications.
Like what specifically?
Well, things like neodymium, which is vital for the high-power magnets used in electric vehicle motors, wind turbines, and also sophisticated missile guidance systems. And others like dysprosium, needed for specialized laser technology and nuclear reactors. Really crucial stuff.
And China's move was?
They instituted new export restrictions on these critical minerals, limiting how much can be sold abroad.
And this timing? It's widely seen as an effort to bolster their bargaining position, right? Ahead of a planned meeting between President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump.
It certainly looks like a direct strategic move. If key sectors in the U.S., particularly defense and green tech, suddenly lose reliable access to these essential Chinese processed minerals, their manufacturing timelines get disrupted, costs skyrocket. It gives China leverage.
And what was the U.S. response to these restrictions?
Pretty aggressive. President Trump threatened to actually cancel that planned meeting with Xi, and he also threatened to impose what he called massive new tariff increases on Chinese goods.
So, an immediate escalation, tit for tat.
A classic escalating dynamic, yeah. And it destabilizes global markets when you have this uncertainty.
And China didn't stop there, right? They added port fees.
That's right. They announced additional port fees specifically targeting U.S.-linked vessels starting October 14th. And notably, this mirrors similar fees the U.S. had imposed on Chinese ships earlier. So it highlights how these maritime disputes and trade disputes are really intertwined.
What's the impact been so far?
Well, the market reaction was swift. We saw rare earth mining stocks outside of China jump significantly as investors anticipated supply constraints and higher prices for non-Chinese sources. It just underscores how fragile the global supply chain is when one nation controls such a huge percentage, like 80% or more, of the processing for these absolutely crucial materials.
A vulnerability many countries are now trying hard to address. Okay, shifting focus over to Europe now. The Kremlin has declared that dialogue between Russia and the United States regarding the ongoing conflict in Ukraine is on a, quote, serious pause.
Yeah, that was the statement from Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. He attributed this stagnation primarily to what Moscow sees as Kyiv's lack of a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue.
What's their reasoning?
He cited perceived encouragement from Ukraine's European allies for Kyiv to pursue, in his words, a war to the last Ukrainian. Basically, the official Russian line is that Ukraine holds unrealistic hopes of achieving military victory, and this stance undermines any potential for peace negotiations.
Okay, so that's the public stance. Talks are paused because of Ukraine, but is that the whole story?
Well, it's complex, because despite Peskov claiming this serious pause in formal talks, another Russian official, Putin's aide, Yuri Ushkov, simultaneously affirmed that Moscow and Washington do remain in constant contact.
Constant contact. How does that square with a pause?
Ushakov said this contact is based on agreements established during a previous summit in Alaska. It suggests that while the high-level, publicly visible peace talks might be stalled, vital bilateral communication channels between Russia and the U.S. likely remain open behind the scenes.
To manage de-escalation. Prevent accidental clashes.
Presumably, yes. To manage the conflict and prevent it from spiraling completely out of control. So the public diplomacy might be frozen, but essential back-channel communication seems to continue.
Meanwhile, on the ground in Ukraine, the situation remains devastatingly grim.
Tragically so. Reports indicate major Russian drone and missile strikes recently cut power across Kyiv and 9 other regions of Ukraine. Over 1 million households were reportedly affected.
And the human cost.
Terrible. Tragically, a 7-year-old child was reported killed in southeastern Ukraine as a direct result of these strikes. The focus on crippling infrastructure continues to have deadly consequences for civilians.
And there was also a report about a major pipeline.
Yes. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that retreating Ukrainian forces intentionally blew up a section of the massive Togliatti-Odessa ammonia pipeline. This happened during their withdrawal in the Donetsk region.
Ammonia. Why is that significant?
That pipeline is huge and strategically critical for transporting ammonia, which is a key component of fertilizers. Destroying a section of it not only causes a dangerous toxic ammonia spill locally, with severe environmental and public health risks.
But it also impacts global food supply chains.
Exactly. It disrupts the global fertilizer market, potentially affecting food prices worldwide. It highlights how the tactics in this war, focusing on infrastructure destruction, have far-reaching consequences, both immediate and long-term, human and environmental.
A grim picture indeed. Okay, let's move to the Middle East now. There appears to be some movement, maybe a diplomatic breakthrough, regarding a ceasefire in Gaza and hostage negotiations.
Yes, there are reports from various sources indicating a ceasefire deal might be close, potentially with a countdown underway for the release of Israeli hostages.
And some sources are attributing this diplomatic progress to efforts by U.S. President Trump.
That is being reported, yes. That his administration's push has been key in getting the parties closer to an agreement. Of course, the details are still emerging.
What's the reaction from Hamas?
Well, a senior Hamas official, Khalil al-Hayya, reportedly announced that the war could conclude under the proposed peace plan. That signals a potential readiness from their side to stop the active fighting.
But there's always a but, isn't there? What's the main sticking point?
The major long-term obstacle remains disarmament. Analysts widely believe that while Hamas might agree to a ceasefire, they will firmly reject any demands to relinquish their small arms or, crucially, their extensive network of tunnels under Gaza.
Why is that such a red line for them?
They view demands for total disarmament as an existential threat. Giving up their weapons and tunnels would leave them completely vulnerable, in their view. So they see it as a non-starter, something likely to derail any chance of a sustained peace agreement, even if a temporary ceasefire holds.
And on the Israeli side, Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing immense pressure too, right? From multiple directions.
Absolutely. He's caught between hardliners within his own government who oppose any concession that might leave Hamas militarily capable in Gaza.
And international pressure.
And intense pressure from international bodies demanding accountability for the high number of civilian casualties during the conflict and urging a path towards a lasting political solution, not just a pause in fighting. The long-term sustainability of any ceasefire really hinges on whether mediators can somehow bridge that huge gap between Israel's absolute security demands and Hamas's insistence on retaining its military capability. It's an incredibly difficult needle to thread.
It certainly seems so. Okay, this brings us now to a very complex internal political dynamic playing out in the United States. It involves political accountability and highly charged accusations of retribution.
Yes, this involves the New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Who recently won that major civil fraud case against Donald Trump in New York.
Exactly. Now, she herself has been indicted in the state of Virginia on charges of falsifying documents related to obtaining favorable loans some years ago.
Okay, an indictment against a sitting attorney general from another state. How is her side responding?
Very strongly. Her attorney, Abby Lowell, who's quite prominent, and also civil rights leader Al Sharpton have both come out swinging. They are publicly framing this entire FBI investigation, which, notably, was initiated after a complaint was filed by a Trump appointee as blatant political retribution.
Retribution for her successful case against Trump.
That's their explicit argument. They're calling it an abuse of power, even using terms like tyranny. They argue it's highly irregular and suspicious for a state prosecutor to face federal criminal inquiry over matters related to a case she's successfully prosecuted civilly against a major political figure.
So it's creating this narrative.
A very dangerous narrative, potentially. It highlights this intensely polarized political climate where the legal system itself is increasingly seen by people on both the left and the right as being potentially weaponized for partisan political warfare.
The perception that the justice system can be used to silence or punish political adversaries.
Fundamentally undermines public trust in the rule of law itself. It's a deeply concerning development, regardless of the ultimate merits of the case against James. The political framing is explosive.
Indeed. Okay, and finally, in this geopolitical section, staying in the political vein, but shifting to international alliances, the ongoing NATO burden-sharing debate. It's been reignited by recent statements from President Trump.
Yes, President Trump suggested that Spain should potentially be expelled from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Expelled? Why Spain specifically?
For failing to meet the new, much higher defense spending target of 5% of GDP. This 5% target was something Trump reportedly pushed for and secured agreement on, at least in principle, at the NATO summit back in June.
5% of GDP on defense. That is a massive number. Most NATO members struggle just to meet the long-standing 2% target.
Exactly. 2% has been the goal for years, and many still fall short. 5% is a huge leap, especially for countries with large social spending commitments.
So, what was Spain's response to this suggestion they should meet 5% or face expulsion?
Spain's defense minister, Margarita Robles, was quite blunt. She called the 5% goal absolutely impossible for Spain to meet.
Impossible? Why?
She cited severe domestic priorities, economic constraints, essentially saying Spain has other urgent needs for its public funds. Instead, she proposed a significantly lower, though still challenging for Spain, target of 2.1% of GDP for defense spending.
So, pushing back firmly.
Yes. This whole episode just exposes that continuous underlying tension within the NATO alliance regarding equitable military spending or burden sharing, especially when very aggressive defense spending goals, pushed primarily by the U.S., clash head-on with the economic realities and different political priorities of European welfare states. It's a recurring debate.
A debate that seems likely to continue. Okay, let's move into our fifth deep dive: global wealth, development, and climate stability.
All right. Economics, environment. Crucial intersections.
And we have some truly unusual and pretty compelling economic news coming out of the Americas first.
Yeah, Guyana, the small South American nation.
What's happening there?
Guyana is projected to be the only country in the entire America's North, Central, South Caribbean expected to achieve double-digit GDP, gross domestic product growth, consistently through 2027.
Double-digit growth
in
this global economy. What kind of numbers are we talking?
The projections are stunning. 11.8% growth forecast for 2025, potentially soaring to an incredible 24.0% growth in 2027.
24%. That's astronomical. How does that compare to the rest of the region?
Massively different. Other Latin American and Caribbean nations are expected to average only around 2.3% growth over that same period. Guyana is just in a completely different league right now.
What is driving this unprecedented boom?
It's almost entirely driven by their massive offshore oil and gas discoveries. Huge reserves found off their coast in recent years.
The oil effect. How much are they producing?
Daily production already exceeds 600,000 barrels. and it's projected to surpass 1 million barrels per day by 2030. For a small country like Guyana, that's an absolute economic game changer.
A game changer, yes. But aren't there huge risks associated with that kind of sudden oil wealth? The resource curse.
Absolutely. That's the critical risk everyone is watching. The resource curse, or sometimes called Dutch disease.
Explain that quickly.
When a country gets a sudden, massive influx of wealth from one commodity, like oil, it can cause major problems. Massive inflation, making everything else expensive. An over-reliance on just that one commodity, neglecting other sectors like agriculture or manufacturing.
So the rest of the economy kind of withers.
Exactly. It gets crowded out. And it makes the country incredibly vulnerable to future swings in the price of that one commodity. In this case, oil price volatility.
So what does Guyana need to do to avoid this curse?
They need an extremely robust strategy for managing this wealth. The key is usually setting up a strictly managed sovereign wealth fund, like Norway did.
To save and invest the money wisely.
Precisely. To ensure the oil benefits are invested carefully in long-term priorities like infrastructure, education, healthcare, diversifying the economy away from just oil over time. And crucially, strong governance is needed to mitigate corruption, which often flourishes with sudden resource booms, and to help stabilize the shock of all that money hitting the economy at once. It's a huge challenge for them.
A challenge many nations have failed to meet, unfortunately. Okay, speaking of stabilization, let's look at market movements and efforts elsewhere. U.S. markets pulled back a bit.
Yeah, Wall Street saw the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ composite retreat from recent record highs. Mostly just seemed like investor caution, maybe taking some profits off the table ahead of major corporate earnings announcements. Big names like Nvidia and PepsiCo were due to report. Standard market ebb and flow.
But the U.S. was also involved in actively stabilizing another economy in South America.
Yes, in Argentina. The U.S. government finalized a significant financial support package, a $20 billion currency swap framework with Argentina.
A currency swap, what does that involve?
It essentially involves the U.S. Federal Reserve making dollars available to Argentina's central bank in exchange for Argentine pesos. The agreement even included the direct purchase of Argentine pesos by the U.S.
Why do that? What's the goal?
It was a critical political and financial lifeline for Argentina. The main purpose is to bolster the stability of the Argentine peso, which has faced massive volatility and devaluation. By providing access to dollars, it helps Argentina manage its currency, attract crucial foreign investment that's been scared off, and hopefully prevent a further currency collapse.
So a sign of a constructive relationship aimed at helping Argentina through its complex economic recovery.
Exactly, a stabilization effort.
Okay, now let's turn to the absolutely urgent matter of climate stability, and specifically, the huge gap in funding for climate action.
Yeah, this is stark. The Global Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, the FRLD, is set to officially launch its call for proposals at the upcoming COP30 Climate Summit in Brazil.
Loss and damage. This is the fund meant to help vulnerable countries cope with the irreversible impacts of climate change they didn't cause, right? Like sea level rise, desertification.
Exactly. Impacts they can no longer adapt to, only suffer from. So the fund is launching, but the starting capital is the issue.
How much does it have?
It starts with about $250 million available in pledged contributions so far.
Okay, $250 million. Now, contrast that with the need.
Well, the anticipated costs just for loss and damage in developing nations, the costs of dealing with climate-related disasters, displacement, lost territory, are projected to reach somewhere between $200 billion and $400 billion per year by 2030.
200 to 400 billion a year needed? And the fund starts with 250 million.
Precisely. That initial capitalization is less than 0.1% of the low end of the anticipated annual need just a few years from now. The gap isn't just wide, it's an abyss. It's nowhere near enough.
And for some nations, this isn't an abstract projection for 2030. It's an existential threat right now.
Absolutely. Look at Tuvalu, the low-lying Pacific island nation. Most of its land is less than 1 meter above current sea level. They are literally urgently fighting for their nation's physical survival against rising seas.
What are they asking for?
They're actively advocating for a global fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, basically, an agreement to phase out fossil fuels entirely. And they need immediate climate finance, not in 2030, but now just to build essential seawalls, maybe try some land reclamation projects, simply to keep their country above water. Their very existence as a nation depends on global financial action and emissions cuts.
It's hard to grasp that level of immediacy. And this funding need isn't unique to small islands, right?
No, not at all. This urgency is echoed by many larger developing nations, too. Angola, for instance, recently submitted a revised climate action plan, their nationally determined contribution, or NDC, outlining their goals for emissions cuts and adaptation.
What do they estimate they need?
They estimate they need a staggering $412 billion in total funding to achieve their climate goals. They figure they can maybe source about $48 billion of that domestically through their own resources. Which leaves a gap of over $360 billion that they say needs to come from international support, climate finance, technology transfer, capacity building. It just illustrates the monumental financial challenge facing nations that are trying to develop, transition to cleaner energy, and adapt to climate impacts they're already facing, all at the same time. The scale is enormous.
Enormous. And that funding gap seems central to whether we succeed or fail globally.
Okay.
Let's look at a domestic economic debate now, this one in the United Kingdom. A proposal related to the housing market.
Right, this involves stamp duty. Kemi Badenoch, a prominent figure in the Conservative Party, proposed abolishing stamp duty entirely.
Stamp duty.
Yes.
That's the tax you pay when you buy a property, right? Based on the value.
Exactly. It can be a significant upfront cost, especially for expensive properties or for first-time buyers trying to scrape together a deposit and pay the tax.
So abolishing it sounds appealing. What are the arguments for getting rid of it?
Well, proponents argue it would significantly lower those upfront costs, potentially making it easier for first-time buyers to get onto the property ladder. It could also increase market fluidity, make it less costly for existing homeowners to move, whether that's trading up to a bigger house or downsizing one older. It's seen as a way to unstick the housing market, encourage transactions.
Sounds good on the surface.
Yeah.
But critics are warning about a potentially disastrous downside, especially given the UK's housing crisis.
Yes, the major concern revolves around supply and demand. The UK already has a severe shortage of housing supply, particularly affordable housing.
Right.
Critics warn that removing a major financial barrier like stamp duty without simultaneously boosting housing supply could simply stimulate demand dramatically. More people wanting to buy, but the same limited number of houses available.
And the inevitable consequence of rising demand against constrained supply is
Higher property prices. So, paradoxically, abolishing stamp duty could end up making houses even more expensive, potentially worsening the affordability crisis for those trying to buy, especially first-time buyers.
And the government would also lose the tax revenue.
Billions in tax revenue, yes, which would have to be made up elsewhere through other taxes or spending cuts. So it's a classic, difficult policy trade-off. The allure of lowering upfront costs versus the risk of fueling price inflation in a supply-constrained market. No easy answers there either.
Seems to be a theme today. Okay, before we get to our final synthesis, let's run through a few quick contextual global news nuggets, just brief highlights.
Got it. Quick hits.
First, something that will directly affect UK travelers planning trips to Europe soon.
Ah, yes. The EU's entry-exit system, or EES. It's been long awaited, and it's finally starting implementation.
What does it mean for travelers?
It means UK travelers and other non-EU nationals visiting the Schengen area, that's 29 European countries, will need to provide biometric data. We're talking fingerprints and a facial scan.
Where does this happen? At the border.
Yes, typically at the border crossing point.
Right.
This data will be stored and checked against immigration databases. The long-term goal is supposedly to streamline border control, make it faster by automating checks.
But in the short term?
In the short term, expect some complexity, potential delays, maybe confusion as the system rolls out across multiple countries and border points simultaneously. Something to be aware of if you're planning travel.
Good to know. Okay, next. A major cyber extortion campaign targeting big businesses.
Yeah, this involves the ransomware group known as CLOP. They're reportedly actively targeting customers of Oracle's e-business suite. That's software used by many large corporations for critical functions.
What are they demanding?
Huge ransoms. Reports mention demands of up to $50 million. And their strategy is interesting, sometimes called encryptionless ransomware.
Encryptionless, so they don't lock the files.
Not always. Instead of, or sometimes in addition to, encrypting the victim's systems, their primary tactic is often to steal large amounts of sensitive corporate data first. Then they threaten to leak that data publicly unless the ransom is paid.
Ah, extortion based on data exposure, not just system disruption.
Exactly. It maximizes their leverage because the reputational damage and legal fallout from a massive data leak can be even worse for a company than temporary system downtime. It also reduces the technical complexity for the attackers sometimes. A very nasty and effective tactic.
Deeply alarming. Okay, shifting to a quirky but medically significant health note. The beauty parlor stroke syndrome.
Yes, this sounds odd, but it's a recognized, albeit rare, phenomenon. Research highlights that the way hair is sometimes washed at salons.
Leaning your head back into the shampoo bowl.
Exactly. That hyperextension of the neck, leaning backward, can sometimes compromise blood flow in the vertebral arteries in the neck or even cause a small tear, an arterial dissection.
Which could lead to a stroke.
In rare cases, yes, it can restrict blood flow to the brain sufficiently to cause stroke symptoms. Now, the risk is very low for most people, but medical experts caution that individuals who already have pre-existing vascular conditions, neck issues, or maybe severe arthritis should be particularly aware. They emphasize the need for salons to use proper head and neck cushioning to maintain a comfortable posture and avoid extreme hyperextension, just to minimize that small risk.
Something to maybe mention next time you get a wash. Okay, and finally, a really cool update from the world of archaeology. Scientists think they might have cracked a lost language.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It relates to the great ancient city of Teotihuacan, near modern Mexico City. Researchers studying the murals and inscriptions there.
Writings that haven't been understood before.
Right. They now argue they may have decoded the lost written language of Teotihuacan. They believe it's likely an early ancestor of the Uto-Aztecan language family, some branches of which are actually still spoken today in Mexico and the U.S. Southwest.
How did they figure it out? What was the key?
The key insight seems to be realizing the language utilized the rebus principle.
Rebus. Like those puzzles where pictures represent words or sounds?
Exactly like that. Using an image or a symbol not just for its literal meaning, but to represent a sound or syllable, like famously drawing an I to represent the sound I or the word I. Applying that principle allowed them to start matching symbols to linguistic structures.
And if they're right,
If they're right, it could fundamentally change our understanding of the culture, history, and communication networks across ancient Mesoamerica, opening up a whole new window onto that civilization. Really exciting potential.
wow, okay. From decoding ancient languages all the way back to writing the blueprints for future longevity, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have. It's a lot to take in.
So let's try to synthesize. What are the big takeaways?
Yeah.
For me, it's the sheer potential of that precise gene editing, the really high-stakes race in AI between open and closed models, and just how complex that geopolitical landscape is right now, driven by everything from resource control to those rare earths to these accusations of political retribution.
Yeah, and I think the common thread, if you look across all these stories, remains this delicate, often tense balance. On one side, you have incredible technological ambition, Intel pushing for 18A dominance, Reflection AI getting billions for open source AI, Stoke Space aiming for reusable second stages.
Pushing the frontiers outward.
That's right. And on the other side, you have this urgent, fundamental human need for stability. And that stability is biological, like we saw with the longevity research and the gene editing safety focus.
Phenomenal.
Hugely environmental, as highlighted by that monumental climate funding gap versus the existential threat facing places like Tuvalu.
And it's political, too.
Absolutely. Political stability reflected in the incredibly complex negotiations around ceasefires, disarmament, alliance cohesion, and even the trust in domestic legal systems. And for you, the listener, maintaining critical thinking remains absolutely essential to understanding how all these different factors, technological, biological, environmental, political, continuously influence and shape one another. They're all connected.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, thinking about those connections. And this is our final provocative thought for you to chew on today.
Let's hear it.
Reflecting on that juxtaposition of sources, we see Stoke Space raising $500 million, largely from venture capital focused on defense applications, for reusable rockets, rapid deployment, national security drivers.
Right. Big private investment in defense tech.
At the exact same time, the Global Fund specifically created to deal with loss and damage to help save entire nations like Tuvalu from literal physical destruction caused by climate change. It starts with $250 million.
A tiny fraction of the $200 to $400 billion estimated to be needed annually very soon.
So the question this raises, and it's a tough one, is this. Where is humanity truly choosing to invest its most advanced capabilities, the biggest financial bets, right now?
Is it primarily in developing defenses against existential threats emerging from nature, like climate change?
Or is the overwhelming focus still on developing defenses, however advanced, against perceived human adversaries? It's a stark contrast in resource allocation.
It really is a question that maybe defines our global priorities, or lack thereof, doesn't it? Something important to think about.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this edition of The Deep Dive.
We hope this analysis helps you navigate the complex frontiers of tomorrow just a little bit better.
Until next time.
Enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.